Alright. So, Micro Center, because I am stupid and did not realize that the new Uniden R3 that I got requires USB mini type B. I should have honestly realized that first when I had gotten it, and probably not have gotten it, just said fuck it, we will, and get a Uniden R7. Also, you can see me struggling with new driving gloves. Legit, these things are nice. Also, Alcantara steering wheel. You know what? I probably don't need that much of grip. I could probably just leave these undone and just say fuck it. Alright, so rainy day. Rainy day. So, no race. Gonna keep traction on. Look at our speedometer here. Also, cool day in May. Very unexpected. Usually it's all warm. Oh, and I forgot to turn off. Stop start. So let's shut that off. Also shut off our parking sensors. You know, standard for a yada yada. Be a bit of a gloomy day, but it does feel nice out. Really nice. Is that a Focus ST? That might be Focus ST in white. I actually wanted one of those when I was in college. Unfortunately, they never came down to the price range where I could afford them back then. First car was actually a, well, define, I guess depends on how we define first. Is first the first car that we drove, or first the first car that was technically paid for by yourself? If it's the first car we drove, then that would have been a 1997 Nissan Sentra. And that one was pretty alright. Unfortunately, ran into a deer one winter evening and it got totaled out. But, oh well. Was out of a car to drive for a little while. Oh, I can already feel this. It's kind of wanting to slide. So I was out of a car for a little while, up until my older brother gave me his 2001 Honda Civic LX. I remember that because that thing ran and ran and ran, and we basically kept track of it for a long ass time. It ended up going to one of my cousin's friends who had it for a while, up until he got a G37, and recently he got an F80 M3. He went and did a single turbo kit on it. Thing is sick, makes a lot of sounds. Damn thing's pretty fast from what I can reckon. I think it might be putting down 650 to the wheel. Not much going fast here because, again, a lot of rain dumped overnight. Fairly cool weather. Oh, but highway's drying up nicely. back to what I was saying before getting distracted mildly. There was after that 2001 Honda Civic, I got a 2010 Volkswagen Jetta, the 2.5 liter 5-cylinder. Sometimes affectionately called one of the worst engines made because it just sounded bad. I would personally blame that on whatever header design Volkswagen used, but it was okay. It was solid. It was honestly more of a highway cruiser along with some tight turns handling. It wasn't a Autobahn Stormer, that's for certain. Definitely nowhere near on, say, the level of a GTI or a GLI, anything like that. But I enjoyed it for a good 3 years in college, and then it got rear-ended by a truck and then went into the back of another truck. So that got totaled too. 2 totals. We are not looking so good, are we, in all honesty? But after that, fourth. I'm realizing just how quickly I effectively have gone through cars. Most people usually have one car for 10 years. I've gone apparently through several. But yeah, that car got totaled. Ended up using our family SUV for most of college, and then I drove my dad's Lincoln Town car once he stopped needing to use that for the tail end of college, up until I got my first internship at a geotech. And there I was actually able to get enough money to be able to solidly pay for myself. So what I would call my car, a 2019 Volkswagen Passat Wolfsburg Edition. Honestly, I enjoyed that car. I know that magazines will probably say, nah, it wasn't really that good. It was pretty mid. It used a rendition of Volkswagen's EA288. No, not 288, EA888. Or have I already gotten them messed up? When you stop focusing on one specific car for a while, you start to forget things. But had that for about 3.5 years. That was on lease, and then I returned it. I shouldn't say we, because it was my car. And from there, ended up getting a 2021 Ford F-150 XL with the STX package. This was after I had started working as an field technician on the CMT side of things. And traffic. Held on to that for a while. Then when I finally got moved up into an engineer position, I ended up selling it and looked around for, I think it was about 5 or so months, and then finally decided on getting this Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. So out of all those, it's pretty easy to tell that it went in escalating power. That Sentra was the weakest, followed by the Giulia being the most powerful. But yeah, this is one of those cars that I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it. I will keep it. SN95. Honestly, people didn't give enough credit to the SN95s. They kind of brought things back in the American muscle line of thought. I mean, technically Fox Bodies went and kept everything going for, what, almost 15 years? Up until the SN95 was brought in. And then... But, I mean, more from a sheer power perspective. Most Fox Bodies were just not really powerful unless you were a big block Ford or big block Chevy guy and basically just straight drag racing. Essens were like a very interesting breed because they didn't really do that. Ford basically said, let's try and, instead of it just being straight line, let's try and put a little bit more focus in the turns. Which is, again, funny because technically, way back when Shelby had first started playing around, or I say playing around, he was hired by Ford specifically to make the Mustang actually fast. They did actually end up being something that was good in chorus. Is that an XM? Wow. These things are so weird because they're like so polarizing on the outside, and yet the more you look at them, and maybe that's just because Atlanta, haha, I gotta be bougie. It's just, it's so weird. They're polarized just enough to be special, and also also in the bad way to make you just cringe when you look at them. But the interiors on them are, I would honestly say the XM has the best mainline sport luxury interior. I still feel like I need to put sport here in like quotation marks because wow, they're heavy sons of bitches. And man, oh man, they are not actually that quick because of all that sheer mass. But honestly, I think they're fine. They appeal to a demographic. I do not belong in that demographic, and that's honestly okay. I prefer my cars to be small, and even though this Giulia Quadrifoglio does weigh a lot for its class, that being the compact executive sports sedan, I still prefer this size. I prefer this size. Under 4,000 pounds is basically where I'd want to keep it for something that I'd want it to be sporty. Which is odd for me to say because I test drove a C63 and an Audi RS5, both of which are firmly above 4,000 pounds, but V8 or no V8. Of course, in saying that, I did test drive an E92 M3 comp. That one was amazing. Honestly, price on it was really good. It might have had 170,000 miles, but it drove wonderfully. Interior was basically free of all rattles and squeaks. Only funny thing was the button that limits power, or I'm not entirely sure what to call it because it's not specifically an M mode compared to what they have nowadays with like M modes and such. This wasn't that. This was like specifically power and suspension, and basically you just clicked on them to try and change stuff, and those came out, which was funny, but that V8, that was delicious, amazingly delicious. that's how the cookie crumbles. That's probably not the right way to use that phrase. But main reason why I ended up going for the Quadrifoglio was just because this has a specialness in the steering, in the handling, the way this idles. This feels something so much more different. Also, those upshifts and the overrun on this are amazing. If anybody does happen to see this and watches Unlockable Character, he managed to get a video of this revving from the outside, and it's so hard to seemingly capture all the neat little party tricks that this engine's exhaust does. The overruns, the cracks. It can capture just enough to say this is a bit special, but of course, and most people listening to it and comparing it to a V8 would say, I'd still get a V8. Of course, that's just from being on the computer, not being able to hear it properly. I think even the straight pipes, which have an amazing sound setup to capture sounds as best as possible, even they can't get the sound right. It feels like the only way to get an inkling of that sound is to just watch any actual straight piped Giulia Quadrifoglio video. Then you can get it. I can probably... No, I'm not going to squeeze through that because he's probably going through there too. Here's our turn for Micro Center. There's one thing, I do not get the choice to operate the valves. I have to either choose race mode or keep it in normal. So Micro Center, we will go pick up our stuff and then we will be back in a few.